Hey guys, Toby Mathis here, and today we're going to talk about asset protection for your business and what's the best business structure for your business from an asset protection standpoint. We're not going to talk a lot about tax today. We're just going to zero in on some fairly basic concepts when it comes to asset protection. And number one is what you own can put you at risk. So if I own a business, if I own a piece of real estate, if I own, just fill in the blank, any sort of investment, what is the risk that is creating? And I would put those into two broad categories: risk and non-risk. Non-risk is like if I own a bunch of investments in a company, like I own shares in a company, it's not going to put me at risk. If I own a savings account, it's not going to put me at risk. Nobody's going to trip and fall on my cash, right? But if I own a piece of real estate, or if I run a business and own a business, and I'm not talking about owning a business in the sense of I own securities of an LLC or securities of a corporation, like I own the shares of a corporation. I'm talking about I am the proprietor. I own a business. Maybe I'm doing something on the side. Maybe I'm driving around doing DoorDash. Maybe I have a consulting business. Maybe I am a real estate agent. That business, just owning that business can put you at risk. And here's some easy low-lying fruit to give you an example. You're driving for your business, you got your name on the car, whatever else, you get into a car accident, both you and the business are getting sued. I don't care whether you think you're driving personally or not, but you're both going to get there. And if you have assets in that business, inventory, for example, if you have a bunch of cash in there, that's at risk. And if you don't isolate that risk, put a box around it. Like when I say put a box, I'm talking about a legal entity, an LLC or a corporation, something to contain it. I'm putting it inside that box so that if I am doing something for that business, or more importantly, if you have an agent doing something in your business, so you have an employee or somebody that you contracted with, and they find out that somebody's doing something for you, like somebody gets harmed. Car accidents are pretty easy ones. Somebody does something, somebody even strikes another person, somebody breaches a contract, somebody uh, does something to create liability. It could flow right into your personal realm if you don't have a box to isolate it. Seen it happen all too often. When you own a risk asset like a piece of rental real estate, that if I own that individually, I have to worry that if something happens, I have a slip and fall, house burns down, whatever, major harm occurs to somebody, I am the one who's personally responsible for that, unless I isolate that liability and I put a box around that liability. So, what's the most important concept here is that what you own can put you at risk. Number two is who you control can put you at risk. And when you have a family, this is where your kids can put you in great risk. We see it happen all the time. We've had a bunch of clients that have had run ins where a teenage student, one of their kids, gets into a car accident, harms somebody. Who they sue? They sue the parent. They're coming after you. We even had one where the child was actually at college and they struck and killed somebody in a crosswalk. And unfortunately, if you do not have a structure to isolate your other assets from yourself, and when I tend to use the phrase, put a box in it, there's two things. It isolates what's in the box, and it also keeps you from contaminating what's in that box. In other words, we're isolating it from yourself. Put it another way. Let's say I have a cup of coffee, right? I don't want the hot coffee to get on me. This cup protects me. But if I do something, what protects that cup from me? What's going to keep somebody from taking that? Well, it's really tough. There's statutes that actually can create that type of protection from you. You're using the laws to your advantage. And the easiest example I can give you is a state like Wyoming or Nevada, where they have a sole and exclusive remedy. And that sole and exclusive remedy might be somebody could put a lien against your other asset. Like, hey, I have a business and it's in an LLC. The most that they could do is put a charging order, a lien against that. They can't control it. They can't manage it. They can't force distributions out of it if your operating agreement's done correctly. I should put a caveat on that. But you created a situation where, hey, at least they can't take my cup. So if there's cash in the cup, I don't want them to take the cup and empty it out. I want to protect it. I want to make sure that if somebody comes after me because it's something I can't control, my children do something, and now I have liability and I can't control that liability, the best thing you can do, besides insurance and besides getting an umbrella policy that covers in case the primary policy doesn't, I want to make sure that I have high limits, but I also want to be smart and use the laws to my advantage. Another example of that is like things like IRAs, 401ks, cash value of life insurance is often protected. The equity in your house could be protected. If you're in Florida and Texas, for example, you have an unlimited homestead. You could have a $3 million house. You could have a $3 million judgment against you, and they can't take your house. There's a certain amount of equity that's protected. Most states have decent levels. Some states have horrible levels. It just depends on where you live, but you want to be aware of that. So you're looking at it saying, hey, I pull equity out of my house and put it someplace else, and I'm exposed to liability. I may be in deep doo-doo if they come to take that money. So I need to be really smart about my exposure to risk. The other thing I can do is structure my legal affairs in such a manner to where I'm isolating, let's say, the non-risk asset. I have a big brokerage account with $1 million in it. I have my real estate, which is just a liability. You may as well just put a target on your back nowadays. It's a great investment. But if you own real estate, there's literally nothing you can do to really minimize your risk because you have other people staying in your property, and those other people may be dumb. The other people may do dumb things. They may act really irresponsibly, and they're going to hold you responsible for it. Whether I've seen mold, somebody flooded the basement of a rental unit, and then they sued the landlord because there was mold, because they ran the shower too long, and they literally flooded the downstairs. They didn't tell the landlord, of course. Then they said there's mold, and then they were sick, and it's not just them, but it's their 3 kids that are also sick, and they ask for astronomical sums. How do you protect yourself? We isolate that liability and try to keep it in its own box. We isolate the non-risk assets, try to keep it in its own box. And then we don't want someone to come take your real estate from you because I can't stop the liability that I create. I drive. I hit a 32-year-old neurosurgeon who's just starting off in their career. I'm sorry. Your auto insurance, your umbrella is not going to cover that. That's going to be a huge suit. I can't pick and choose and say, hey, I'm only going to drive when the high net worth people are driving around. So what I do is I make sure that they can't take things from me. I make sure that the assets that are non-risk creating are isolated on their own. And I isolate the other assets and the other businesses from each other. So that if I have, let's say that I'm in a family and I have a spouse who's a real estate agent who could get sued for misrepresentation, and I have a pizza business on the side, I have to make sure that a discrimination suit or a lawsuit or somebody burns themselves on the pizza doesn't come through and takes my spouse's business, and I have my $1 million account. I got to make sure that that's not exposed to these 2 activities. And I have my rental properties. I got to make sure that they're all isolated. It's actually pretty simple to do because legal entities tend to be fairly simple in that there's only a few choices, and they tend to make themselves really obvious as to what you use. So for example, I have real estate and I have 5 pieces of property. I'm not going to mess around. I'll probably isolate each property from itself and have a holding entity that holds those to make my bookkeeping really simple, to make my taxes very simple. Maybe I want to make sure that those properties show up on a page 2 of my Schedule E so I'm more lendable. So I'm using that. I may have that holding company be in a state like Wyoming, so nobody can take it from me. That's what I'll do, is I'll isolate it that way. And then I'll take my other businesses and isolate them. And I'll take my cash, my brokerage accounts, my crypto, whatever it may be, non-risk assets that are sizable, and stick those in an LLC. That LLC probably won't even file a tax return. And I try to keep it really simple and make it so that these things are isolated. And this is the most important part: before there's liability. Before there's liability. Now, there's other things like pensions that are protected. There's homesteads. There's the cash value of life insurance. Every state has a little bit of a different nuance. on that. So you want to check with somebody who knows what they're doing. But at the end of the day, we're just trying to isolate risk so that I don't put myself into a bad situation. And here's what usually happens: it sneaks up on you. You have no idea that your business, that somehow you're going to end up with three people suing you because they wrongful termination or something like that when the economy goes haywire, or they do something and get them, like literally they could do something to get themselves fired, and you just don't know all the nuances of the laws, and you open yourself up to some predatory lawyer who's going to try to take everything you own, and they realize there's no isolation of assets. They have no reason to not try to dig in and take as much as they can. They have every reason to try to ruin your life and try to take everything you got because it's just all sitting there. So you isolate it to make sure that that doesn't happen. If you want to learn more about this type of information, come to our tax and asset protection event. We have them every month. They're fairly straightforward. You'll learn about land trusts, LLCs, corporations, any even some of the more nuanced entities, like using a personal trust to get your name off of things. The what we believe in is this something called security through obscurity. It's making sure that somebody cannot find what you have to use that as a predicate for a lawsuit in the first place. It shouldn't matter, but deep pockets attract lawyers, predatory lawyers. So you want to make sure you don't appear to have deep pockets in a public record. But we have this class every month, and it's done by usually myself and one of my partners, Clint Coons, who's a fantastic attorney. He really breaks it down and makes it understandable. So if you're somebody who has a business, has real estate, has knows that they have risk, and just doesn't know whether it's something that they should be concerned about or what they can do about it or what their options are, great class to attend. If you're somebody who knows you're exposed, like you're sitting there with a bunch of real estate in your name and you're like, oh my God, I've seen what's happened. And I see what happens, especially when the economy starts to drop and all these lawsuits start flinging all over the place. I need help. Then please reach out. We'll give you a free strategy session where we can take a look and see what we can do. We call it our risk assessment. We call it the risk reduction formula when you're starting to break it out and use the different entities. And it's very straightforward. We'd be happy to do that for you as a courtesy. Just reach out so that you can get more information. And if you know anybody that could benefit from this or want to leave comments, please do. Share this with anybody that you know has unmitigated risk and hasn't done anything to protect themselves.